after 9 on Tuesday the 16th of June. Coming up later, those all-important inflation figures, and it is thought the country will come back into very modest inflation after a period of deflation. We'll give you the figures and tell you exactly what it means. Plus... Can you imagine Rod Stewart wearing an apron? No, me neither, but apparently his missus, Penny Lancaster, claims no man can ever look sexy in an apron. More on that later in the hour.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
I bet Sir Michael Wilshaw, Chief Inspector of Schools for Ofsted, has never been introduced after a Rod Stewart track asking you, do you think I'm sexy? But Sir Michael is here to take your calls and answer your questions. All matters educational, whether it's for you, because, of course, some of you now are going to be enjoying the start of your summer holidays if your A-levels, GCSEs or other exams, ASs, have come to an end, or possibly it's for your children or grandchildren as well. And, Charles, you're going to be the first caller in just a moment. But while I have the benefit of you in the line, benefit of you here in the studio, Sir Michael, I do apologise, here in the studio, can I put you, there's some very harrowing developments at the moment coming out of Yorkshire, but we've seen them elsewhere in the country. Yesterday it was Talha Azmal, a 17-year-old, a school pupil in Britain, who, it would appear, decided to become a former suicide bomber. We have other children today. This is the action of their mums, it has to be said. What can we do to educate these people, Sir Michael, and welcome to the programme.
Thank you very much. It is worrying and it is shocking. I mean, we are inspecting against British values at the moment, and when this was introduced by the government, people said to me, is this an extra burden on Ofsted and on your HMI and inspectors? And I said, no, it's one of the most important things that we do. It's really important that schools, all schools, whether they're faith or non-faith schools, whether in monocultural communities or not, teach British values, the importance of tolerance, the importance of understanding other cultures and other faiths. And if they don't do that, and they don't promote tolerance, then we will mark them down and we will fail them, as we have done in some cases.
How do you work out, Sir Michael, if someone is promoting tolerance? I can work out what sort of grades you get in maths. I get that. How can you work out tolerance and teaching of it?
Well, if you cast your mind back to the Birmingham schools, yep, they were preaching intolerance to those youngsters in those communities, and we failed them as a result of that. It's quite easy, actually, for inspectors to go in and say, are you teaching about the predominant faith in your school and others? Are you teaching about the importance of tolerating other people and other cultures? Are you doing it through your RE lessons? Are you doing it through your personal, social and health education programs? You can tell very quickly whether a school is doing that or not, and if they're not doing that, they're going to fail an Ofsted inspection.
How big a problem is it, do you think, around the
country? I think it is a problem, and I think these youngsters need to believe that they belong to our society, that they need to believe that there's hope for them, that the education system is there for them, that they'll do well in their examinations, that they'll be able to get a job and they'll have a real strong and secure future in this country, and that they will be appreciated by society. If they don't believe that, then the temptation is to listen to the voices that say, come across to Syria.
And before we take the first call, lastly, Sir Michael, is it fair to perhaps suggest in some way the British education system has let them down?
Well, they've been let down in some institutions, and we've highlighted those institutions. But we've got to make sure that these youngsters in these areas, in these monocultural areas, particularly in areas with large Muslim populations, they have terrific schools which show them that British education is doing well by them. That's really important.
And Charles Clarke would say these ideas of religious assemblies, he said yesterday, you probably had sight of his comments, they should be scrapped.
No, they shouldn't be scrapped. I mean,
the former education secretary is wrong.
We inspect against what we call SMSC, spiritual, moral, social, cultural, and those things are very important. That it's important that youngsters understand the difference between right and wrong, good and evil, and those traditions have been passed down through the generations, through the religious values that people have held for hundreds of years.
But he would say, if you take somewhere like Dewsbury or Tower Hamlets in London, what is the point of having a Christian assembly for a school that is predominantly Muslim? Or there are other faiths.
Well, we've been to those schools. They talk about the Christian faith as they talk about the Muslim faith and the Hindu faith. And it's important that all schools understand it's the nature of our society and teach about all faiths in those sorts of communities.
Put your headphones on if you would, Sir Michael. We're going to come to the first caller so that you can respond to. It's Charles in Tottenham, and you're through to Sir Michael Wilshaw. Go ahead, Charles.
Hello, Sir Michael. Hello, Nick.
Good morning.
Hello,
sir. My question is, and I've been worried about this for a little while. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the reason why. There was a story last Thursday of child in a school photograph who was asked to remove their hearing aid because it had a headband, and this was quite upsetting to the child and upsetting to the parents as well, I gather.
Yeah, just to give background for my listeners, don't go. This is at Middlesbrough Pallister Park School. It was a 6-year-old boy. He had particularly acute hearing problems and that he had to wear a device on both ears, and it was held in place effectively with a headband, and his school, and they subsequently apologised. A teacher did say he would have to take it off so he would, quote, look smart for his school photo. The head teacher subsequently apologised. To your question now, Charles, if you would.
Yeah, and Michael, my question is to Michael. I'm very worried about children falling behind in mainstream schools, especially disabled children. And disabled children fall behind because there is no proper support teaching staff going into those schools. Can you assure me that you will do all you can to make sure that this happens?
I can assure you that when inspectors go into schools, they look at the provision for all children, including children with disabilities, and we will talk to the special needs coordinator and those people responsible for liaising with outside agencies. So I can assure you of that. But there's nothing more important than parents of disabled children keeping a track of what's happening in the school and raising issues with the head teacher and senior staff.
Quick response from you, Charles.
Well, I hope that you will do it, because
He's a man of his word, I can assure you.
Very, very sad.
It is indeed. It is indeed. So, Michael, if nothing else, is a man of his word. Charles, thank you for getting us started. Steve is in Reading. You're through, the Chief Inspector. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, good morning, Nick. Good morning, Sir Michael.
Good morning, Steve.
I've got basically a three-pronged question. Why are the Ofsted visits pre-warned? Why do you not just turn up out of the blue?
Well, we do on occasions that if we feel there's a particular problem in a school, as we did in Birmingham and elsewhere, we will turn up unannounced.
It's quite rare, though, in fairness, isn't it,
Yeah,
Sir Michael?
it is. And we have deliberated on this, and I've deliberated on this over the last 3 years. The problem with unannounced, it's twofold, really. The first one is this. We're relying more and more and more upon good schools, good teachers, outstanding schools and outstanding head teachers to support schools that are less than good. And we want to encourage as much of that as possible. If head teachers believe that inspectors will suddenly turn up in the car park, they're less likely to go out of their school and support other schools. And that was a powerful voice from the people that we talked to when we consulted on this, particularly the head teacher associations. That's one reason. The second reason is a more straightforward logistical one. If we turn up unannounced, it's really difficult to get in touch with governors. It's really difficult to get in touch with head teachers. The head teacher may not be there to answer questions for us. That's the other reason. In the time that I've been Chief Inspector, we reduced the notice period from 48 hours, 2 days, to just a few hours before the inspection starts. So schools have very little opportunity to change things.
Yours was a three-prong question, Steve. Do you want to go to the second prong and quick response?
Yes, if you wouldn't mind. Right. The second thing is, do you check sort of like the number of pupils that are on like enhanced pupil premium relative to the number of staff? The reason I bring this up is my wife actually works in the education, and at the particular school she works at, there are 14 children that are statemented, yet there is only one teacher and 2 learning support staff.
Yeah.
So they're completely under pressure, and it's not working. Now, this school was put into special measures.
Yeah. Well, it wouldn't have been put into special measures for just that one reason alone. There would have been a whole series of issues that inspectors found. All I would say is that schools get their own budgets now. It's up to them to use their budgets wisely. And if they want to prioritise special needs, if they want to prioritise the provision for disabled children, etc., they can do that. There's no one that's going to tell them how to spend their money.
No, I appreciate that, but surely if they're getting an enhanced pupil premium...
Yeah, and we inspect against it. You will know that Ofsted inspects against how they spend the pupil premium, and if they're not demonstrating that they're using that money wisely and closing the gap between free school meal pupils and those not on free school meals, then we're critical of that institution.
And you've got a quick final point, if it's a quick one, Steve, because a lot of callers want to speak to the Chief Inspector.
Surely. The last bit basically is, do you actually speak to the teachers themselves and the support staff when you do your visits? Because it would appear that most of your communication is just between the governors.
No. We speak to governors, head teachers.
How do you select which teachers you'll speak, or how do your inspectors select which teachers they'll speak with?
Well,
Sir Michael?
we go around the school and we go into classrooms and we talk to teachers and we talk to senior teachers. And often the head teacher will say, I'd like you to speak to this group of newly qualified teachers doing a terrific job, and we'll do that. So we speak to a range of people of various seniority levels in the school. If I can just return to that issue of the pupil premium, what's really encouraging is that more poor children are getting a better deal now than ever before, and what is really good is that more poor youngsters are going to university in England now than ever before.
Steve, thank you. Safina in Walthamstow. Go ahead, Safina.
Hiya. My question is related to more like helping young Muslims counter extremist ideology. Basically, I've heard of a group that's doing a first ever launch of an Islamic curriculum on counter-terrorism. And I wanted to know how Ofsted or schools and colleges can help this organisation to reach out to students of secondary schools and colleges and kind of teach them the correct interpretations of Quran and Hadith, because ISIS is kind of recruiting online and they're kind of presenting the religion in an incorrect manner. And this curriculum is very important, and it's very crucial that we reach all youngsters.
Yeah.
And how can they help this organisation do this?
Well, we can't identify particular organisations and help them. That's not our job. The government can obviously recognise individual institutions and fund them if necessary, if they think they're doing a good job in this area. I just return to the first point that I made. What we do when we inspect schools is to ensure that schools are offering a broad and balanced curriculum, that they're teaching British values, and they are alive to the dangers of radicalisation if they're in communities where this is a problem.
Thanks for that. Just pause briefly. There was an article in one of the newspapers earlier in the week. Schools need more maverick head teachers who shake up the system to improve life for children, so said Sir Michael Wilshaw. Tell me about your head teacher. Can you remember his or her name?
Well, I remember my head teacher, who was a priest called Brother Peter, who was a bit of a maverick, but even more of a maverick was the deputy head, a man by the name of Cecil Pocock, who was a very military type figure. I'm quite an old man these days, and I was educated in the 50s. A lot of teachers had been in the war, and he was a very military type figure with a pencil moustache and slick back hair. He used to march into the classroom with his
Everybody
gown
stood
on.
up, I imagine.
Everyone stood up, and he was a fearsome character. And he used to stand at the front of the class and say Pax. We didn't know as an 11-year-old what Pax meant in those days. and he started to teach, and because it was the 50s and pretty old-fashioned ways of teaching, he used to sit at the back of the classroom with a little dirty yellow exercise and dictate notes to us. And he said, "This will get you through your O-level, boys. I'll tell you that now." But occasionally, one in every 2 or 3 lessons, he would break off from dictation and he would extol the virtues of the monarchy. He loved the monarchy. He loved this country. He talked a lot about the British way of life and the great event of history. And he was an absolutely magnetic teacher. And that's why I went into teaching, because of him.
Because of Mr. Pocock?
Yeah, and I that's why I'm a history teacher. That's why I love history.
Did he know? Did he know how well you did? Is he still with us?
He's still alive.
He's
not particularly well. He's well into his 80s now.
Right.
And he's in a care home. And in the Times Educational Supplement, I mentioned him, and somebody went along with the magazine, and he was delighted. But he was, that's what teaching can do. That's what great teachers can do. They can inspire people. And
what's a maverick head, Simone?
Well, a maverick is somebody who...
Because one man's maverick is another man's idiot.
Cecil Pocock, this guy who taught me, was a bit of an off-the-wall character.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the best teachers are a bit off-the-wall, actually.
Define off the wall.
Off the wall, people are prepared to bend rules a bit. People who are prepared to do things differently. Children never know where they are. Staff don't know where they are. But my God, they achieve good results at the end of it.
Let's go back to some calls. We have, is it Dure in Greenwich? Hello, Dure. Have I pronounced that correctly?
Yes, you have. It's Dure.
Hello, Dure. You're through to Sir Michael. Go ahead.
Hi. Good morning, Sir Michael.
Good morning.
I don't have much. research done. But I just want to say, I have a school opposite me. I have 3 girls. Eldest is 7, then 4, and then a 1-year-old. And the school opposite me has satisfactory grades, and it's had that for each year I've seen. Unsatisfactory, sorry. Grade 3.
Unsatisfactory.
Inadequate.
Yeah.
And I take my girls to a school, a 10-minute drive down, because before my eldest went to school, I'm really into Ofsted, and it really I want them to go to a good school. And I saw that the one 10 minutes down was a much better school. Actually, at the time, it got outstanding.
Okay. So I've got to move you to your question. Please don't think I'm being rude, but so many people want the question. What is your actual question of Sir Michael Dure?
Sorry.
That's all right. No, please.
If a school has got unsatisfactory for so long, what does Ofsted do about that? Because I would rather they go to the school.
Of course. And how long has it been unsatisfactory to your knowledge, Dure?
The last 3 ones I've checked online, the last 3 checks they
Last
had.
3 checks. All right.
Unsatisfactory.
All right. Stay on the line.
Well, two things, Dure. I'm really sorry that your youngster's in a school in special measures, if that's what has happened.
I think it's the school opposite, so she has to drive 10 minutes to a good school.
Yeah.
I hate to use good and bad, because the one opposite is very... How do you help a school turn itself around?
Well, 2 things. First of all, we've made it very clear, when a school is put into special measures, the government then intervenes. And what tends to happen is that they find a sponsor of an academy or an academy chain to come along and take that school over. It doesn't improve. If the school is in a requires improvement category, the old satisfactory, it's given a bit of time to improve. And again, if it doesn't improve within in that period of time, up to 4 years, then it's taken over by another institution, and the Secretary of State has powers of intervention. All I would say is, I know this may not be relevant to your case, but we've got more youngsters now going to good and better schools than ever before. The English education system is improving. It's nowhere near where it should be in relation to the top performers in the OECD, but we're moving ahead at a faster rate. And the English education system is doing better than Wales, significantly better than Wales, significantly better than Northern Ireland, and literacy and numeracy levels are going up in this country, whereas in Scotland they're going down. So we've got a lot to be proud of in this country, and we need to build on the successes that we see at the moment.
Quick response, Dure, from you.
All right, no, that's fine.
Okay, I'm very grateful. Thank you for that, Dure. Just on the subject of pupils and performance, you'll be aware that Nicky Morgan, the Education Secretary, in her first major speech since last month's general election, will talk about how pupils need to perform better in GCSEs, reforms for England, so qualifications, she will say, will match the highest standards around the world. The reforms will see the grade considered to be a good pass set at the equivalent of a current low B or a high C. Are you fully supportive of this?
I am, and I am for the reasons I've just articulated. We are a mediocre performer in relation to the rest of the world, and we've got to be much more competitive to meet those higher standards, and that is why I'm in full support of what the Secretary of State's doing.
And are you also supportive of the appointment of Tom Bennett?
Yes, I've not met him. I've read his blog. I think his blog is entitled The Behaviour Guru.
He's a former nightclub bouncer, Sir Michael.
Sounds a good qualification for being somebody who's responsible for behaviour in schools, or to give advice to the Secretary of State on behaviour in schools. I've read his blog a few times. He speaks eminently common sense.
And do we have a problem with discipline in
Well, we
schools?
produced a report called Low-Level Disruption in Schools.
They reckon some pupils lose an hour a day. When you think that's a fair old chunk of school time, they lose an hour a day because other pupils are messing about.
That's what our report said.
That was from your report,
That's what our report said. They lose an hour teaching and learning a day. That's 38 days a year in some institutions, and that is not acceptable. And it's this wearing down of teachers in the classroom, of turning up, being cheeky, not bringing books, using mobile phones, swinging on chairs, all that sort of stuff. Which is
I'm sorry, I shouldn't smile, but it's exactly what I used to do.
It's so
apart from
irritating.
mobiles.
Well, I hope you were punished severely.
I went to an all-boys school. You can imagine where I got.
Yeah, exactly. And that is why we need to crack down on it. And I think lots of head teachers are doing that.
All right. OK, one quick email before we go back to the calls. This comes from Rachel in Bexley. Cheltenham Ladies College says it's to phase out homework because it upsets the girls. Are they right?
No, they're not right. I mean, homework is a vital part of a youngster's education, to supplement what's taught in the classroom. I did homework, you did homework. We had to bring it back the following day. I think it's a nonsense.
My problem was I didn't always do my homework, actually, so Michael, that was the problem. Ali is in Greenford. Go ahead, Ali.
Hi, good morning. Morning, Nick. Morning.
Good morning.
Can you explain why you are compelling people of Orthodox beliefs, Christians, Jews and Muslims, under the jackboot of Ofsted inspections to abandon core tenets of their faith?
I don't know what you mean by that.
Well, let me give you a couple of examples. Grindon Hall, where you were accused of not being honest to Parliament in whitewashing the thorough speech marks investigation into the Christian school, where you spoke to 10-year-olds about lesbian sex and things like that. Vice Jacob School is a Jewish school in Manchester. Do you want some more examples?
Well, I refute all those allegations which appeared in the press, and I stand by what I said to the Education Select Committee. This was nonsense put about by people in those institutions. We went into those schools and failed them, and we failed them for a whole host of different reasons. One of which is that they were not teaching a broad and balanced curriculum, and they were not tolerant, and they were not promoting the faiths of other people.
Back to you, Ali.
So you were not talking to 10-year-olds about lesbian sex?
No, we're not. No, we're not. We want to know whether they've been bullied and whether there was homophobic bullying or not. And we found that there was. And incidentally, we went into those schools because of complaints about homophobic bullying.
Quick response from you, Ali.
Well, Mr. Wilshaw, when you talk about tolerance, the antithesis of your report is that because you are not tolerant of people of faith, whether they're Christian, Jewish, or Muslim. Look, Parliament. Excuse me, one moment. Parliament.
How can you say Ofsted's not tolerant of people's faith?
Well,
Michael's just pointed.
May I?
Yeah, but if you make an allegation like that, you've got to back it up, Ali.
Oh, well, may I? Well, I was going to quote you something, but you might recognise where it's coming from. Just give me a second, I'll quote you. In the parliamentary report into the episode last summer of, where is it? The Trojan affair.
Trojan Horse, yeah.
Yes, in Birmingham.
Oh, 1 second. Yeah, that's right. Quote. Now, this is a parliamentary report, not me speaking. One incident apart, no evidence of extremism or radicalization was found by any of the inquiries, and there were half a dozen, in any of the schools involved. Neither was there evidence of a sustained plot nor of significant problems in other parts of the country. End quote for now, ellipsis.
Yeah, well, I fundamentally disagree, although I agree with a lot of what the Select Committee has said and done. I disagree with their conclusions on that. And I was very clear in my submission to the Education Select Committee. And what I said was that although Ofsted didn't find extremism in the schools that we inspected, what we did find was a culture which was being promoted by the governors of those institutions, which, if it had carried on, would have made children vulnerable to extremist influences outside the school. We were very clear on that.
And in that same report, it's also suggested that some Ofsted inspectors had asked pupils whether they were virgins.
Well, that was wrong. And I refuted that publicly, and I stand by that. We investigated that thoroughly.
On a related, Ali, thank you. On a related issue, Graham in Bushey, where are you with the Trojan Schools in Birmingham, and will you be investigating schools in places like Dewsbury and Bradford? Asks Graham.
Yeah, we are continuing to monitor what's happening in Birmingham and in other parts of the country. I will be producing a report to the Secretary of State at the end of the month on the latest developments in two areas, Birmingham and Tower Hamlets. You'll have to wait and see what we say on that.
Suzanne says, I'd like to ask why there are different exam boards for the same subjects. In time to come, no one will ask, did you do the ridiculously difficult Edexcel GCSE in 2015, or did you do a different board? It isn't a level playing field. My son, who was estimated to get at least a grade A, came away from his exam absolutely crushed.
Well, I'm going to push that into the middle grass or long grass, and that's an issue for the Secretary of State. I have a particular view that possibly we should go for one board and not another.
One national England.
One board, but that's an issue for the Secretary of State, not me.
What benefit would that be, lastly, on that, Sir Michael?
Well, greater consistency.
I think we've got time for, yes, we do, one more. Nick is in Beckenham. I think last caller for today, for this particular part of the show. Nick, go ahead.
Good morning, Nick. Good morning, Sir Michael.
Good morning.
I was intrigued to listen to your experience about being taught by slightly off-the-wall characters. As you say. It was great. I got the same. I was just wondering how you and Ofsted can promote these kind of teaching methods when obviously these public sector kind of industry sectors are ever more bureaucratic, looking at box ticking, looking at results, when obviously looking at that Educating Yorkshire, that one teacher that went above and beyond just to help that one pupil, but it changed his life completely.
That was a documentary series, Sir Michael. Yeah.
How are you promoting these values within teachers to to kind of...
Well, we're quite clear that we don't have a preferred style of teaching. What we want to see are teachers teaching in different ways which have an impact on the performance of individual students and classes within the school. If we see teaching which is leading to good progress and good outcomes, we're happy. If we see didactic teaching which is doing that, we're happy. If we see teaching in groups, fine. If we see teachers jumping up on desks and teaching from a desk, that's fine. The maverick teacher, because one of the best teachers I've ever seen used to jump up on a desk and teach modern languages from a desk. You know, what we're interested in is impact.
And lastly, I think I know the answer to this, but I have to ask you, handstands and cartwheels have been banned from a primary school in Plimpton in Devon. After a number of children have injured their wrists or their backs, they've now been banned during playtime.
Well, that's an issue for the head teacher, but I'd carry on doing cartwheels and handstands.
He will not cartwheel out of the studio. It's always good to see you. So, Michael, come and see us again soon. You can see by the level of calls, we've got so many people wanting, but we're fresh out of time. Come and see us again soon if you can.
Good
so, Michael Wilshaw, thank you for appearing on LBC Chief Inspector of Schools.
Thank
Head of Ofsted coming up after the news. Rod Stewart's missus says men cannot look sexy in aprons, and possibly more importantly, those vital inflation figures. It's all after this. 9:31, you're listening to Breakfast with me, Nick Ferrari, here on LBC. Let's get the news. Lisa Aziz.
The head of the school's watchdog has told LBC he fully supports the Education Secretary's plans to